in Ashland. They were gonna retire up there. They're selling there, so they move to the coast. So
Ready?
that would be, confirming.
Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at, I guess, about 10:04. Roll call.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Present.
Commissioner Wiedemann?
Present.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Warner?
Here.
Commissioner Holtkamp?
Here.
Vice Chair Purnell?
Here.
Chair Ogle?
Here. And item 2, Planning Commission Administration. What that is? Okay. Determination of legal minutes. Do we have, or legal notice? Do we have determination of legal notice, Caitlin?
Legal notice has been established.
Thank you. Do we have a director's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Planning Commissioners, and staff here. I first want to introduce Brent Schultz, Planning and Building Services Director. I want to introduce our new staff members. First is Jim Feenan. Jim is going to be our new Commission Services Supervisor. You'll undoubtedly see him sitting up there hopefully soon as we're training him on the process, and we're glad he's here. He's jumped right in. And now, where did you come from, Jim? HHSA. We stole them from HHSA. And I'm learning the process around here. We find the good people, keep them. So anyway, it's great to have you, Jim. Want to introduce you to the commission. Next up is Dirk Larson. He's going to be Planner 2, and he's coming to us from the assessor's office. And Dirk's jumping in. He's going to give us a lot of knowledge about each property. And he's really been helpful to our planners, and we're glad to, and everything we do. So we're glad to have him here. And then next up is Siobhan Holmes. She's a Planner 2. She's coming to us from the Ag Department, the Cannabis Unit, and she's transitioning now off into planning. And she's been so helpful with the transition of the cannabis program over, and really helping me understand everything about the cannabis program. So it's great to have Siobhan with us. I wanted to let everybody know that we are pretty much fully staffed, with the exception of the cannabis unit and the Fort Bragg office senior planner position that Bill Kinzer had. We really need to find somebody in that role. That's the manager of that office, handles so many projects. And if you know anybody, please send them my way. I would like to talk to them right away about the benefits of that job. So, but that we're doing well, I think. There's always a lot of things we can do better, but I really like the team that's come together. I think things are gelling, and we intend to do a lot better work in the future. Not that we haven't done a lot of work, but we're going to improve. So one of the things there's been questions about why no planning commission meetings and what's been going on, and this is due primarily to the fact that we've had less major applications that you would see. Although I've been really busy with zoning administrator and coastal permit administrator meetings, but they've been those applications. However, you are going to see, I think at the May 16th meeting, a number, I think there's 5 or 6 items. Seven items. I reviewed them yesterday, so you'll see those at that 16th meeting, and undoubtedly there's going to be more coming. We did merge. The cannabis unit is now within us. We took our file room and quickly renovated it, and we've got all the inspectors there. Sean Connell's our new cannabis manager. He's been in that position. He's now with us. I really tried to set it up so everybody who works on those permits is in close proximity to Julia and I, and so we can work out problems. It's a brand new ordinance. There's lots of questions on how it's implemented. It's amazing how much time we spend on what did they mean. So this is all new to me, so we're figuring it out, and also with the help of county council. And I wonder, Kit Elliott is here today, and I appreciate her being here. Matt's at a conference, but anyway. And the next up is. You may have seen that the board considered our planning and building fees and cannabis fees and a whole host of county fees. Those were approved. They're going to go into effect July 1. I am watching those closely. People have asked me, what do you think of these fees? We have some new modules in Track It. I think I'm going to have a better idea. We've after I track it for a year's process to see, should some of those be lowered? Should some be increased? But we do have, Adrian's got a lot of background history, Julia does, and I reviewed them all and I concurred with them. So, but that doesn't mean that just stops right there. We can't collect more money than it costs to do it. It's not allowed, under the law. I'm not tending to do that. Some people have called me on that. I just want to make that clear that, my job is to just collect the fees for the cost of the service, and I'm endeavoring to do that. Our operation, if you look at it overall, it's got about a $2.5 to $2.7 million net county cost. I call it that the county's putting more money in than we're bringing in fees and revenues. So it's always difficult, with the planning and building services. There's a lot of things we do on the phone with people or at the counter. You can't charge for it.
Right.
So and our codes are pretty complex. If you've read them, especially the coastal zone, we spend a lot of time there going over it with people. So anyway, I just want to let that know. And other than that, I think, is there anything else, Julie, you have? And that's it for my report.
Okay, thank you. Now we have matters from public. The Planning Commission welcomes participation in commission meetings. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the commission that are not on the posted agenda and items which have not already been considered by the commission. No action will be taken. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come up? Seeing no one, we will go on to the consent calendar, of which there is none, and our regular calendar. Item 6A, discussion and presentation regarding water regulations in Mendocino County, presented by Environmental Health and the County Water Agency.
Good morning, Chair, Board. Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County Executive Office. I'm a Deputy CEO on that office. The Mendocino County Water Agency is a division of the Executive Office. Carmel Angelo, the CEO, is also the General Manager, and I administer the Water Agency on her behalf. So just a little bit of background. Back in 2015, the county kind of took the lead role of implementing and putting together our next steps for SGMA. So here, just a little overview of SGMA. It's comprehensive legislation to manage groundwater to sustainable levels, and this was passed in 2014. And during that process, DWR has what they call a Bulletin 118, and that's how they determine if a basin is low priority, medium priority, or high priority. And so in Mendocino County, there is only one basin that is medium priority, and that's the Ukiah Valley Basin. And so because of this legislation and that designation as a medium priority basin, we're required to form a groundwater sustainability agency and prepare a groundwater sustainability plan. A little bit about the plan: it includes setting the basin conditions, and to meet sustainability from SGMA, the threshold really is 2015. So we want to make sure we stay at sustainable levels, and that's kind of our baseline year. Within that, we develop a model and a water budget. We will develop management policies and programs, measurable objectives, and 5-year milestones. And we're required to achieve sustainability, but more in the case of Ukiah Valley, really sustain sustainability up to 20 years. A little bit about the timeline. So the regulations were adopted in 2016. And from there, we were required to form a GSA by 2017. The plan is due in January of 2020, and you're supposed to meet your sustainability thresholds by January 2042. A little bit of overview about our current conditions. So within SGMA, the real purpose is to manage groundwater to prevent undesirable results. So a lot of these results may not be present here, but we will have to address them in the plan. Chronic lowering of groundwater levels, reduction of groundwater storage, seawater intrusion, degraded water quality, land subsidence, and depletion of interconnected surface water. So during the initial stages, which I'll talk a little bit later about our initial work, we really focused in on the one major problem that Ukiah Valley faces is depletions of interconnected surface water. And because of our location within the Russian River watershed, and the releases from the dam and our water use. That's kind of really what the main focus is. We will address other areas like water quality and lowering of groundwater levels, but that's really the kicker for us and what we're going to be focusing on. And obviously we don't have some of them like seawater intrusion or large land subsidence like you might see in the Central Valley. A bit about the basin. So the basin starts kind of south part of Ukiah and goes all the way up into Redwood Valley. So all of Redwood Valley is included, the unincorporated areas around Ukiah. It does not include Hopland and it does not include Potter Valley. In terms of acre feet, we were 4,500 to 7,500 acre feet a year for municipal and agricultural uses. We are seeing that the municipal groundwater supply is increasing. We have had some population increasing within this general area. We have a pretty large storage capacity within our basin, and right now we don't have any evidence of groundwater overdraft, and we don't see really a problem right now with the interconnectivity between surface water and groundwater, but we also don't have a lot of data, and I'll get to that, how we're trying to get more data to inform our decisions. So I wanted to go over a little bit about the surface water depletions, since that's one of our main focus. Possibility of surface water depletions that have significant and unreasonable adverse impacts on beneficial users of the surface water. That's really our focus. This can be associated with high groundwater extraction rates, where significant groundwater discharge to surface water occurs. Right now, current and projected groundwater extractions are not anticipated to broadly deplete it, but like I said, we do have a lot of data gaps. We've done a data gap analysis, and we really don't have historical data from this region. And most recent data is really from our CASGEM information, so we're talking in the 2000s. So really, even the 90s, really limited data. So in 2017, the county and the other GSA eligible agencies formed the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And this agency is charged with creating the plan. It also has quite a bit of regulatory authority moving forward in groundwater, from putting requirements on where you can install wells, regulating extraction rates, transfers of groundwater, a number of other things. And so once we have a plan and we kind of figure out what the problems are, if there is a regulatory requirement, they'll have that authority, but they will also have to work with different land use bodies for the county and the city, depending on what type of regulations they determine necessary in the plan. As you can see, we have members from a number of different agencies. So the County of Mendocino, Supervisor Carrie Brown sits on the board. From the City of Ukiah, Councilman Douglas Crane. Russian River Flood Control has a seat, and that's Al White. Upper Russian River Water Agency, which represents the smaller water districts like Willow and Redwood Valley, have a seat, and that's Jerry Cardoza. We also created a tribal seat to get the tribe's participation, since they are a large water user in our area, and that's Brandy Brown. And we also have an agricultural seat, and that's Zachary Robinson sits on that seat. During the creation of the agency and the JPA, we thought it was very important that we have a technical advisory committee that really will work hand in hand with the team and the consultants and the board to really dig in deep in terms of the data and the plan and make some solid recommendations for managing our groundwater. And we have representation of technical staff from each of the member agencies, as well as a couple that are specifically called out, like the California Land Stewardship Institute, the RCD, Sonoma County Water Agency, who controls the releases of Lake Mendocino. And we just kicked that off and have had 2 TAC meetings to review some initial phase 1 work that we did, and we'll be working really closely with them as we develop the regulations and the plan. And that's just kind of a little overview of what the agency looks like. A little bit about the GSP. So of the requirement from the state, we create a groundwater sustainability plan, and that's our outline of how we're going to meet our sustainability goals and make sure, and really regulate this area if need be. And the UVGSA is charged with that. Back in the summer, we went out and we did an RFP for a consultant, and we chose Larry Walker and Associates. They've done a number of other similar plans in different parts of Northern California and in basins that have similar issues as ours in terms of surface water and groundwater interaction. With them, they have GEI consultants. University of California Cooperative Extension from UC Davis is a part of our team, SCI Consulting Group. So during the creation of the agency, the county water agency went out and got a grant from DWR to put together some preliminary work and some draft work. And so during that process, we really went and kind of grabbed all of the data that we could, did an initial model, we did initial groundwater monitoring protocol manual. We did look at the water budget that UC Davis did for City Ukiah and expanded on that. Also looked at water demand and what could possibly be sustainable management criteria. And so we have that preliminary information, and the Technical Advisory Committee has been reviewing that, and we've kind of identified areas where we do need a little bit more work or a little bit more data, and we're going to be working on that as a solid foundation for the GSP. And just a little bit about what we're actually doing is, besides forming a TAC, we'll be engaging stakeholders and communities. So in your packet, you have our communication plan, and it's really important that all of the beneficial users and the stakeholders that this is going to impact have a pathway to participate and communicate their needs and their concerns. We'll be reviewing the phase 1 deliverables. We will be doing a full description of the whole entire Ukiah Valley Basin. We will be creating sustainability goals and measurable objectives. We will be doing a technical analysis, and included that is a model and water budget and different tasks that address requirements of the basin setting components. We started out with a mod flow model, and the county and as well as the smaller water districts, we partnered with Sonoma County and the State Water Board, who's doing a GS flow model for the entire Russian River watershed. So we're actually kind of changing tracks to make sure that our model is going to be GS flow and work with those. So you can see a large picture of the Russian River as a whole, and then a really refined view at the Ukiah Valley level. We will also be identifying projects and policies and programs that will be implemented to ensure sustainability, and we'll have our milestones and schedules, and identify key management areas based on surface water, groundwater interaction sensitivities. And the model is going to be really key, and the data is going to be really key to understand where are our problem areas within the Ukiah Valley that we have to monitor and make sure that if something does happen, like a mega drought or our surface water uses change, how are we going to address that moving forward? We are planning to have a draft finalized of the plan in early 2021, so that we have about a year to actually make sure everyone's comments are taken into account, and we have a year to finalize the plan. And I'll talk briefly, when we do finalize the plan, we will immediately start managing the plan. The DWR does have 2 years to review the plan, and we can make changes down the road. But essentially, once it's adopted and submitted, it's in effect as is until we get comments back from DWR for changes. This is just a little bit about our schedule in terms of like what we're working on right now, which is really developing our data management system, reviewing phase 1 deliverables, completing our data gap analysis, and working on our next point, which is building the model, managing and doing the GSP preparation. So it's a little bit about our schedule and our timelines and our outreach milestones. We also are going to be very active in terms of our community engagement. We've done a lot of stakeholder meetings. We've done a couple of workshops. We have our board meetings and our TAC meetings, and we're going to continue that and probably ramp that up this fall. And this is just a kind of little overview of kind of our milestones in terms of meetings and community stakeholders through this process until 2021. These are just quick important dates that are coming up. On the left-hand side in the red is really big ticket items that the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Agency is going to be tackling. And then on the right is some of the bigger ones that the TAC will be reviewing, and it will ultimately go to the board with the goal of the plan, the draft plan being finalized in March 2021. I just want to briefly talk about kind of our data gap analysis before I get to how we get involved. So one thing that we discovered is we really don't have a lot of data. So we've been using our CASGEM wells, pulling all the well completion reports that we can, gauges, you name it. So one thing that we've really decided to move forward with is working with DWR to get assistance to actually drill wells. So we're looking at drilling anywhere from 10 to 16 wells in different parts of the whole entire basin, and making sure they're close enough to the river that we can really monitor that groundwater, surface water, and we also are going to put devices for continuous monitoring. Because right now, even with CASGEM, we're looking at the wells twice a year. So we're going to look at actually drilling these wells and having continuous monitoring, so we're getting hourly reports of the water conditions. Also looking at different areas where we could possibly put gauges. And so we have 10 locations that we're looking at hopefully doing this summer with DWR, and we have kind of tentative approval. And that includes Redwood Valley all the way down to the southern part of the basin. So we're hoping that that will help us set really good conditions and that we're going to have a better, more accurate model. Because once we have the model, we can really start to run scenarios. You know, what happens if things at the Potter Valley project change? What happens if we have another 10-year severe drought? What does that mean for our groundwater use? Do we have to place restrictions on people? What kind of criteria are we going to use, or management strategies? So really this area of gathering the data, getting the well data, and building that model is going to help us develop our threshold and run criteria of when, how to determine when a problem is and then how to address it. And so we're really glad that you invited us here to talk about this, because as the land use authority that make land use decisions for unincorporated area, you are making a lot of decisions in terms of how the valley develops and where the population happens. So we're glad to be here, and I talked a little bit with our Larry Walker and Associates team, and we want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity, if an ad hoc wants to come and meet with us to do a stakeholder interview, we would love that. We can definitely come back in the future to do a workshop, especially when we're farther along with the model, and really present you with some more information in terms of water use in the Ukiah Valley, which could be beneficial to you. And so we want to invite you in our process and meeting with us and having us back to share information so we can make sure that we're all on the same page. And obviously once we have our draft GSP, we'd love the Planning Commission to provide input on things that may be of concern, especially we're hoping that, you know, the goal of our board is kind of keep it simple. We know we're not in a serious situation now, but we need to make sure that we're prepared should conditions change and should we need to take action to make sure our groundwater levels don't go into an undesirable level. So with that, there's a lot of ways you can get involved. We do e-notifications on our website so you can get informed whenever anything's happening, whether it's workshops or we're publishing anything. We have a stakeholder list. We do a lot of workshops, and we're looking at doing some in the fall and in early 2020. So if you want to do a workshop with us or have us come, we can do that. Our technical advisory committee, they meet in the morning on the second Thursday. And so if there is meetings and you join our list, you can join us. And actually they're really, really great. So if you're interested in really knowing what's going on or some of the preliminary information that's coming out, it's open to the public, and it's a really great meeting to attend. We do one-on-one stakeholder meetings, so if this board has 2 members that want to meet with us, we would love to. And then our UVB GSA meetings are the second Thursday of every month, and our next one's going to be in June. So our May one was canceled, and so we're welcome any of you guys to attend those. With that, I can take any questions you might have on what we're working on or our thoughts.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. What's the website?
MendocinoCounty.org/UVBGSA.
UV
B
E.
B
B.
B as in boy, GSA. And if you have any of your email address, I'll be happy to get you on one of our lists to get notified.
Yes, Dana? Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I had a question, 2 questions. Do you have any, let's say, secure data for the drought years we've experienced, you know, in the last 20 years, you know, to pull from, you know, you briefly kind of went over that, but we're moving forward. I was just curious if you had that, because, and then the second thing is about approximately how deep will these wells be drilled, the 10 of them, more or less?
We haven't determined the depth yet, so we just got the clearance with DWR, and so our team and DWR will start to work on refining the locations, the depth, the type of monitoring equipment. So in the next couple months, we'll have that answer. Pretty much all the data that we have right now is all kind of publicly accessible data from a number of different sources. Most of that really is from the 2000s on, so there are some from the drought years. We do have our CASGEM data, but again, that's twice a year. And one of the things that we're doing with the TAC is really refining it, because there are a lot of different data sets out there, but not all data is created equal. So kind of our first, what we're really focusing on now is what data are we going to pull out. We also know there are certain organizations that have a lot of data, and we're trying to figure out, is there a way we can access that? There has been a lot of concern from landowners that are involved with the California Land Institute or agricultural users that really aren't comfortable with giving us data if that data is going to be public. So we're kind of working with DWR to determine what we really have to make public. And so what we've heard initially is we can get data from people and put it in our model, and that does not have to be public. But when we actually put together our plan, we have to choose certain number of wells that we're going to actually have to report on yearly. And so we're trying to develop all of these wells to be the ones that we use when we publish our reports yearly. And we're working on trying to get some more information from agricultural users and the California Land Institute so we can have a better model, because the better our model is, the more accurate our plan's going to be. And so there's data out there. And it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get that data and have people trust us that we're not going to make it publicly accessible. And our model is in such a way where you're not going to be able to pinpoint, this is so-and-so's property and this is their water use. So that's one of the challenges we're currently facing, is trying to make it an environment where people can trust us to use their data, and for them to understand that it's really just for the model and it's not going to be any of the items that's going to be published yearly with DWR.
Thank you.
Yes, Madeline?
Are you expecting the final disposition of the Potter Valley project to happen within the scope of your timeline here?
Yeah. So for the licensing, it could be anywhere from like 14 to 20 years. Licensing is a really long time. And we will probably, when we create the model and the plan, when we run scenarios, that's a real scenario that we have to consider, because we really don't know at this point what's going to happen in terms of this like orphan project process, or what, if it, so there's a lot of unknowns. So we'll have to build scenarios of what would it look like if that project's not here, or, so that will have to be a consideration, because if that does happen 15 years from now, it will affect surface water use and groundwater use.
But you're not expecting changes there, it sounds like, then by the time you finish this plan.
By the time we get to the end of the plan, we're really updating the plan and resubmitting it. So I think it's definitely a part of looking at our scenarios now, but when we have to put in essentially after the 20 years and update the plan and resubmit the plan, it will be included now and in the update. And actually, when we update it 20 years from now, we'll have a better idea of what's
That's
really going
good.
to happen.
I think knowledge is good.
Molly?
Yeah. The well production figures are confidential also for private homes. Am I correct? Is that right?
Yeah, and we do have a lot of the wells from all of the water districts and the municipal water use, but we don't really have any. Well, we do have some CASGEM wells, but they're not wells in use.
I'm glad to see that Redwood Valley is included in your study. Of course it would be, but anecdotally through the years, we've heard of wells that go dry when another well is put in, and the water district is not fond of having wells put in. So we've kind of sensed anecdotally that that's an area that really does need a study. Do you think you'll try to put one of your test wells in Redwood Valley?
We have a couple of them planned for Redwood Valley.
Great.
Rennie? Go ahead.
Yeah, Sarah, do you have any idea why there's been an increase in water storage in the last 17 years, last 20 years? You had a 5 to 10% increase. It's one of the first. Yeah, there.
Groundwater supply increasing. I think in part it's probably in terms of this is the population center of the county, and a lot of the water districts in the city rely on groundwater as a portion of what they use to serve their customers. And we do have pretty, and they may not necessarily have a large surface water allotment. And if you're interested, I think I still have the information from, we had UC Davis come a couple of years and they did an initial water budget, and they really actually broke down each of the municipal and water agency uses on what percent is surface water and what percent is groundwater, and a lot of it is groundwater. So when you do have population growth, and they're hooking up to something, there is a portion that's groundwater. And in Ukiah, we're very lucky. We have a lot of wells that produce a lot of water and quality water, especially in the city of Ukiah.
I just had another question also, is will these test wells be used for anything other than modeling?
No, we're drilling them, and we're gonna have monitoring equipment, but we don't intend to have them in water production in any way. And they are, I think, 10 of our locations. We're looking at public properties, so trying to partner with the water district, City Ukiah, the school district, and that way there's no concern about private land use information or using maybe a well that's currently in production.
Okay.
So the other anecdotal information we get is from the coast. Do you think you'll ever be doing studies over on the coast?
You know, I think it's feasible. So when DWR does their Bulletin 118, they have a lot of things they consider when they do like this scoring and ranking. And so that could be population overlaying a basin, rate of current and projected growth, number of public supply wells that draw from the basin, total number of wells that draw from the basin, irrigated acreage, degree to which person overlaying the basin rely on groundwater, any documented impacts on the groundwater within the basin, including overdraft, subsidence, and other water quality degradation, and any other information determined to be relevant by the department. And then they take those things, and there's like a scale, and you're assigned a point value, and ultimately that point value tells you if you're low, medium, or high. When SGMA was originally created, it was focused on high or medium. The state very well could say we want all basins, regardless of your low, medium, or high. That could happen. They do periodically redo Bulletin 118. So the last one was an interim in 2016, and we didn't have any new basins, but a lot of other counties did. So there are some that could, there are a couple coastal basins that we have, Navarro, Potter Valley, Sanel. So there's, groundwater basins all over the county that are really low priority. But, these categories can often be kind of broad. Like one of the reasons were, because of the Russian River and the sensitivities for different types of species, concerns from Fish and Wildlife could play a part in our scoring and our ranking. So it's very feasible that other basins could, at different times that Bulletin 118 is updated, be bumped up to medium. And it is feasible that the state may say we want plans for, low, medium, and high. So when a basin is ranked and you get moved to medium, it triggers the creation of a new GSA. And so theoretically, this one could expand to maybe other basins in our general area. But if something on the coast happened, then a new GSA would be created. And the way the legislation is written, if no one steps up to the plate, it's the county's problem. And the county's the GSA. Or the state comes in and manages your groundwater. And no one wants the state to come in and manage groundwater. So, theoretically that could happen. And if that happens in an unincorporated area, it will probably be something similar to this, where the county will take the lead and see if there's any other agencies that want to be involved. So it's kind of really up to the state in terms of if any of them get bumped or if they decide to make every basin do it, regardless of your ranking.
Does SGMA provide any funding for these planning efforts, or is this another unfunded state mandate?
So the planning effort's funded. So we have a little over $700,000 for planning this GSP. We're also going to be pursuing the next round, so we're hoping to bump that up to about $1 million to create this GSP. We want to make sure that it's solid and we have the best information available, because we've got to live with this for 20 years. But the real tricky part is, how are we going to sustain this? So there are a lot of mandates in terms of like regulatory action you could take. And obviously, even if there's not regulatory action, you're still, meeting and managing the basin. So that's one of the problems that we're going to have to work through as we create the plan is how do we actually pay for the implementation? And often with state stuff, they'll give you money to do the plan, but they won't give you money to implement it.
Any other questions? Okay. I had a couple, and it kind of goes back to Commissioner Wiedemann's question about the wells, if they'll be in different areas or different depths. I guess my question is, will there be different depths for different wells? And I'm not sure you know the answer to that yet, since it really hasn't been approved.
Not yet. That could be, depending on where the ultimate locations are.
Okay.
And I would be happy to share with the commission and send it to you for distribution, the kind of preliminary locations we're looking at in the Ukiah Valley Basin. So you have kind of an idea of where we're trying to get some data and and we have a number of different cross sections from both the north part of the basin all the way down. And then those wells will be a part of the county's CASGIM program, which I think we're at like 36 or 38 wells. So it would add to that.
And I'm sorry, it will be the county's what plan?
We have a CASGIM program where we go out and monitor wells in the Ukiah Valley Basin, and I think we have 38, and in the spring and the fall we go and take measurements.
Is that an acronym or is that?
Yeah, it's like California something. I don't know. We it's a long acronym, but it's our groundwater. It's a requirement of the state, and it's a voluntary program where you take measurements twice a year for wells. And we have actually a couple other jurisdictions in the county that participate and report their data to us, and then we report it to the state. And then that data is publicly available. So you can look up well data from like across the state for this voluntary program, but you kind of have to do it to get money from the state. So it's kind of like
Not that
not
voluntary.
voluntary.
Yeah, and I guess that was another one of my comments as far as the report. You start out with Sigma, which I had no idea what that was, and I did find it in here, and maybe I should be more aware of what these acronyms stand for. And the report was great, but boy, you threw out a lot of acronyms, and I'm like, what does that mean?
SGMA's the Sustainable Groundwater Management
Yeah, I
Act.
found that.
GSAs are Groundwater Sustainable Agencies. GSPs are Groundwater Sustainable Plans.
Yes, I kind of figured those out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
It just
a
was
lot.
of-
It can
Here we
be
go,
very,
Groundwater
very-
Elevation Monitoring Program.
Okay, thank you.
It could be very, very helpful to your reports for the public to have a little glossary of all the acronyms.
Yes.
I make agencies do that all the time because you can spend quite a bit of time
Going
flipping
back and
back,
forth.
Yeah.
trying to
Right.
figure out what is that acronym again, and
Yeah.
it'd be good to just have a little glossary of them.
I think sometimes when you're in a certain category of doing something, you're so used to acronyms that the public and the commission, and may not understand all those acronyms, so I agree with you. And it was like, where is she coming from and all these. Anyway, thank you, Sarah. Any other questions? Yes, Randy?
Yeah, I was wondering, if you're going to be drilling these at different depths, I think what's important is we find out where surface and subsurface water can be determined, and that would be a lot of valuable information for, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I presume that'll be one of your goals.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the reason too why we're having that continuous monitoring, because we really have to see, obviously at different levels, but we have to look at pumping and also the river. And so we're kind of pairing the wells with continuous monitoring and the gauges, because you kind of need all of that information to build an accurate model and really understand the true conditions and what the river's impact is on us and how we impact the river. And some we had from the initial phase 1 work. From just kind of the first look, it looks like groundwater gives a lot more to the Russian than we take from the Russian, which is good news.
And I had a question about the interface between the GSA board and the GSA TAC, because I know with water issues, there's a lot of competing interests. It's just kind of the nature of that work. And do you find that the board and the TAC are in sync with one another, or that that there are conflicts, and if they wind up coming from different places, what's the resolution process?
So far, we haven't had conflict, but I intend that there will be. We do have a lot of technical experts, and we do have some individuals on the board that aren't technical staff from the staff of the board. So we have Sonoma County Water, who has 3 basins themselves and run the releases from the dam, the California Land Institute. The board really wanted certain people and the technical expertise there, but I do know the board wants to keep it simple, but that may not always be possible depending on the results. The plan really is that the technical advisory committee is going to do a lot of that reviewing of the technical data and making recommendations for this is the type of management criteria you need, this is the type of thresholds you need. And I anticipate that there will be some really hard conversations once we, I would say probably in early 2020, when we actually really start digging into making some decisions for the GSP. And you're right, it's going to be really interesting. And I think that's probably the best thing about Sigma in this plan is we're taking a look at it, and without it, I don't think there really would have been any resources to invest in kind of creating a GS flow model and really looking at all this stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Marlena, were you tagging onto this, or were you just there for questions, or where are you coming from?
I was here because you guys have been wanting this kind of information and asking me, and all I've got is what our current code is, which the dates are, you know, some are much older than I am, and the questions of what's going on, what's the plan. I'm not a part of this, but I know that Sarah is doing the water agency is really having the answers that you guys are wondering, like Redwood Valley subdivisions. How many, should we do a well for each proposed? Can they share wells? How should we do no more wells? I would love to be able to answer that question. I don't have the data. They're working on getting that data. I'm anticipating from this process that we're gonna find out whether or not we have an issue, whether or not we should be limiting to it, how we'll be amending or changing our land development guidelines for water requirements in the future. We're not quite there yet, and we do have our coastal groundwater study, and that's not changing. Those requirements are going to continue, and I'd be happy to just talk about those in general for your next future subdivisions that you guys are going to be reviewing and approving if you have questions about the proof of water requirements that are on the books right now. So I didn't want to disappear, but really I feel that particularly for the questions about Redwood Valley subdivisions, this is, Sarah's got the lead on the information.
And I'd like to just say 2 things too. This could be a great opportunity for partnerships in terms of working with the county and the city in terms of potential conditions that might need to be placed when we do developments. Another one is I wanted to, within Sigma and the regulatory authority in the statute, if the groundwater agency does require any type of regulations of extractions or anything similar to that, there is a provision that whatever actions that we do need to be consistent with the applicable elements of the city or county general plan, unless there is insufficient sustainable yield in the basin to survey land use designated in the city or the county general plan. So at some point, if we get into a situation that kind of triggers the GSA to take regulatory action against someone, so let's say we have like a mega drought that's like 15 years or something like that, there will be some type of interface in terms of general plan and land use with the county and the city. But with this data and information and being able to provide you within this, Sigma will creating a data management plan so that either the agency will house all the information and it will be information we can share with you. It could be a good partnership in terms of providing you information you need to make your decisions and opportunities where we could potentially partner down the road if there really does become a problem at some point.
So I think I've heard this, but I wanted to double check. How well do you think you'll be able to predict after you get maybe 5 or 10 years worth of information, the consequences of a 5-year drought? Because, you know, if we put houses there, then it's kind of too late. It would be it'd be helpful for us to have some, anticipated, limitations on how many residences could go in a certain area. I
think that's probably something that we can help with. we have a really great team that's working on the model, and they're part of Larry Walker and Associates, but also UC Davis. And we have a agreement with USGS and their big model. So I think these are scenarios that we can run in terms of what happens if population grows by 10,000 people and we have a drought. And I think those are all really great scenarios that we need to run. And it's important that we have that kind of information from you in terms of, hey, we're making land use decisions. We want to know if we, allow all this development to happen, what does that mean? And it's important for us to know because it can help us essentially better plan our management. And I think when we actually have something we can actually run scenarios with, and it's a part of like a larger effort, we hopefully will be able to answer some of those questions. But it has to be a consideration, because if you're going to increase the population of the valley by 20 or 30,000 people, yeah, that's going to have an impact on your water use.
I had a question, a couple points. How would this study help interface other areas in the county, such as we have Anderson Valley, we have a large, there is the sometimes the need always gets brought up by the community of we need more housing and more development, but on the other side is then you have, expansion of ag lands there and extracting waters, and then you have the Navarro River watershed issues. So the question is, how do we use your baseline data, right, to model, when you're setting up, when you're going forward with your studies and your data, how do we think in a broader term how we're going to implement that in other areas of the county, maybe so that it is more cost effective coming down the road? We can, use the modeling data. They can overlay, because, ultimately water may start at the Sierras and ends up at the coast when we drill, right? We kind of get how deep we're having to drill now. I do residential development. How deep we have to drill is a big issue. So I just want to make sure, we don't always have to reinvent the wheel, that this is a great, it's a great plan of action, and I'm just encouraging, let's tie it together for the other districts.
Well, I think we're really lucky that the State Water Board has really started to push looking at more like water availability and kind of watershed plans, because I think whenever you're talking about water availability, you really have to look at the watershed as a whole. And the first big movement is this whole Russian River. There has been talks to do something similar to what's happening in the Russian River and like the Eel River shed. I think that SGMA was really the state's first stab on trying to, because in most other states, groundwater is regulated. Trying to get a stab at doing this statewide, and we'll see in 2020 we're going to start to see the the overdraft basins come in, and I think DWR has a lot on their plate, but I foresee the state kind of taking it further once they actually have gotten through the critical overdraft basins and have gotten through all the medium and high priority basins, which are going to cover a large area. But there also have been plans at the state level to start to look at larger chunks of the state. And part of the reason why the Russian River happened, it's is the not just USGS, but the State Water Board really making it a priority. And it's a very unique watershed with a lot of different, whether it's species and all that kind of stuff. So I think long term, just having this done here at the county, if we get another basin in, we're prepared. So this is kind of like round one, and hopefully we don't really have any other basins come in for a while, because it's going to take us, it's going to take us till 2022 to get this on the books. But if we get another medium or high priority or something, we're prepared to do this again, and we have like a reference point. But I think the overall larger movement of the state actually kind of focusing on watersheds as a whole is really helpful. And so hopefully the Eel will be next. But I think the Russian River watershed is kind of the experiment child in terms of looking at these like large models and paying attention. But that's, I think, really what's needed long term to really understand water use as a whole. Groundwater is a part of that, surface water is a part of that, but all the ecosystem around you is a part of it too.
You know, I was kind of surprised that USGS isn't in your list of participating agencies, just because I would think they have a lot of data that we've already paid for.
They aren't in the listed agency, but we have an agreement through UC Davis with USGS. So they're sharing all of the information they get into their model that they've collected with us, and we're also doing the same and providing them the data and sharing data, because we don't want to do duplicative processes. Now, we are going to finish before the USGS model is done, but we do have a cooperative agreement with them through UC Davis. So we are working with them.
I feel like taxpayers already paid for that data,
and
so,
in
you know,
Texas
anything
and
you
Mendocino
can get
County,
that
we
we
are
don't
paying.
have to.
Both the water districts and the county did put in funds for this project with Sonoma County. Obviously, the bulk of it, I believe, is coming from the State Water Board. But you're right. We are working with them, and they've actually been really responsive in coming and presenting to us. So we've had them up here at least 3 different times to talk about like where they are in their model and kind of new information that comes out. But our team talks to them on a regular basis.
And I had one other question I guess I'm going to address to Brent. In my notes here, you had updated us on the EIR for the Lover's Lane, and I'm tying this in because here we are talking about water issues, and we've already, I think, approved some of these subdivisions, and it's always a concern, where are we going to get the water? So could you update us on the Lover's Lane, I think it's called Vineyards Crossing North, and the Garden Gate? Those are the 2 I had on my list.
Sure, Madam Chair. Brent Schultz, Planning and Building Services Director. The developer on that Gullion is still working on all the elements of the EIR. They don't have it all done yet. Traffic study they're trying to complete, drainage study they're trying to complete. They've just submitted me will serve letters on sewer. I don't have one yet for water. They're working on that. But we're just, all their consultants and everybody are working on all the studies, and we don't have it all together yet. So it's not in any form where we're ready to bring it forward for consideration by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So they're still working on all their elements of it. We've worked out some things on housing and how to deal with housing on it, but those are, again, they're kind of just draft frameworks, and it hasn't all been pulled together in the final EIR. I'll tell you, being from an urban environment planner, this is very difficult here. There's no, and I was telling Julie and some of the planners, it's really easy in a city with a big water system and sewer system. I walk down the hallway, and the developer does, and they go, hey, do you have water? Yep, we do. Here's how much it costs to hook up to the water and sewer system. They pay the fee. They go, ouch, it's very expensive, but they pay the fee, and it's usually the issue is running a water line a little farther to them or running the road down. Here it's not. It's a whole different process, and plus the resource agencies we have to deal with on things, especially as Diana knows on the coast with the resource agencies. Very difficult, not easy processes. So it's a difficult site. It's somebody told me the other day, all the easy sites have been done. Now it's the hard sites, and you have to be work really hard on them. And we'll see what happens. They're still working on it.
So, I'm sorry, were you referring to the Vineyards Crossing?
Vineyard Crossing, yeah.
And the Gardens Gate, do you know the status of that?
Gardens Gate, I don't have any status on that. Nothing's really come in on it to us of any significance at all, so I don't have anything really updates. There's been no requests of us on it.
I guess discussing, and maybe it's kind of water under the bridge, since we originally, I guess, had already approved the Gardens Gate project, and then that kind of quit, but here we are with the water issue again, and here we are discussing it this morning, and maybe it's a little late, but.
I do just, Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. I do want to say we don't really have any identified large problems, but you do have some unanswered questions. And so, long term, I think maybe this plan and GSP will help you make kind of smart development choices. Where's the best place to put things? But so far, we don't have any critical overdraft or we haven't identified any significant undesirable results. But, depending on what the future holds, we have to be prepared for that. But hopefully the information we have in the model can, help you make decisions, or be able to put conditions on things to say, hey, maybe you need to be like more water, have like water conservation type of measures, you need that kind of stuff. But we'll have more information as we move along.
And Madam Chair, if I could also speak one last thing, is on Vineyard Crossing, another difficulty that developers have getting the EIR done here is we got to do an ag easement. So that's ag land, that's ag 40 over there. So they have to go find an equivalent 59 acre site, similar soil, similar land, it's in vineyard, so not so easy. Not everybody wants an ag easement on their vineyard. They don't want it restricted. So how do you find that? So they're working on that too. There's just a whole bunch of things they have to knock down before they can get to you with their draft EIR and try to get your support for that project. So
And then we're looking at affordable housing.
it will have affordable housing, and if they can ever bring it forward, it will have affordable housing in it.
And
Yeah.
would it require a zoning change?
Yeah, that one will require zone change, yes.
General Plan Amendment 2.
I believe,
Oh my
yes, I believe, yeah, General Plan Amendment 2, yes.
Jeez.
And, just to also, associated with that, you're talking about water and all this, and that's restricting the ability to, we have this need for housing, and we got to build housing, and we don't have water, and we don't have a sewer system, and we're concerned about our ag lands, and I get all that. And we have a state that expects you to get your housing element done this year, and Julia's working on that. Soon that will come forward. You'll start seeing drafts of that and be a part of that process to develop that. We have to do, across the county, 3,845 units, 1,349 just in the unincorporated areas. And you've heard the state of California saying, they're not coming out with anything yet, but we're going to take away your transportation funds if you're not making progress towards it. Who knows what they will do, but I can tell you over my 34 years watching government, they are getting more and more strident when cities or counties don't do anything to build housing. Now, I think have they sued 40 cities? I have no, you're seeing the accessory dwelling unit ordinance is a good example of the state trying to ratchet down and force, basically you got to do this. You have no choice. So, I like the state of California, nice folks up there, but it's just, they're putting, as you know, unfunded mandates, more stuff, taking, I don't like it. I like local control. I like to see the local community decide what they want, but nevertheless, it's, we're getting more and more mandates. These housing elements are not going to be easy. They're going to get harder and harder to get approved through the years. They are. I've watched the process. You used to just be able to come up with your inventory of sites, and it didn't have to be zoned or general plan, and they'd approve it. And you kind of went, whew, they didn't, but now it's no, it has to be zoned. The general plan's got to be in place. You can't count it. So anyway, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how we do with this process with HCD when we submit it at the end of the process. But it's a new world,
Okay.
And no funding to subsidize these projects, by the way. They took, that all away.
So I do have one question on the timeline, Sarah, and thank you for your presentation. It's really great to kind of understand what's in the works and all of that. So you're talking about getting a plan in place by 2022?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we kicked off the plan this past summer in 2018. And we're really going to be amping up a lot of the work in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
So we're looking at having a draft done by March of 2021. And then that plan has to be submitted to the state by January 2022. And we're hoping to get ahead of things because we have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of, most of the time when you have this type of plan, people come in at the end to comment, and we'll have enough time to make adjustments. But it'll be 2022.
So a draft basically 2 years from now. So here's the elephant in the room. What do we do for the next 2 years when we have people coming in for subdivisions? Is there any chance that the data might be available before that time for you to share with us? Because what we like to do is make informed decisions. And so I'm wondering if we really just have to wait for 2 years or if the data might be available to us before that time.
one thing that I think would be really good, I don't know if this board does like ad hocs or anything like that, or can do like a smaller meeting, but I think it would be really great to have like a meeting with Larry Walker and Associates, and we can talk a little bit about like your concerns and what you're really looking for, and we can see if we can provide you with groundwater information and keep you updated. And the first big hurdle is the model. But I think if we have that conversation now, as you guys are a stakeholder in a body that makes land use decisions, we can have that conversation and see, is there ways that we can partner in advance, or as we get information, how do we share that with you in the interim until the plan comes out and our model's complete.
Okay, great. And I think for the record, Redwood Valley is of primary interest. Yeah. Thank you.
And Julia Ackerkrog, Chief Planner. I just want to add that as of this year, we have no subdivisions submitted at this point in May. So halfway through the year already, it's looking like that very likely our timeline would match up with this plan if there are any subdivisions that do come in. So just for
That's great.
your knowledge.
That's good.
That's fortunate. That's really fortunate. Also to speak to that same point, we, representing our districts, we know the areas that the communities are wanting to expand in. And at some point and certainly that as planners, you get that all the time, when we talk the interfacing, right? The sooner we get that information to these, to these consultants, that would be helpful, because that information getting back to the community at large, knowledge really helps early on the pros and cons of going forward with more development of, let's say, housing or what's available resources.
And those of you that do live in the Ukiah Valley Basin and represent that area, we can also do one-on-one stakeholder meetings with you. And when we actually we did kind of our first round of kind of stakeholder outreach when we first created this agency. And then we've been focusing really hard on stakeholder one-on-one, because we're getting a lot of good feedback and people can be more candid about their concerns. And then we're looking at doing kind of more public workshops later in 2019 and 20. And as people that are within your communities, it can be helpful to kind of link us in terms of where we need to do outreach. But all I need is the names of the commissioners that represent and live in this general area, and we can set up one-on-one meetings with each of you when they come out. And I think we're scheduling some stakeholder meetings for May and June, so we'd love to schedule them with the commissioners that are interested in making sure we address your concerns and concerns of your community.
Thank you. And I see where Carrie Brown, I think, is the chair now of that, I represent her district on the Planning Commission. And so I think she's probably involved in maybe she and I speaking together, and maybe attending those meetings, because it is the Redwood Valley, although Potter's not included, maybe in the future. And as Commissioner Purnell mentioned, Redwood Valley, I think you're right. It is definitely something that we need to address, probably more than any other area. So yes, let me know.
So we can just go to your website and get on your email list and all that kind of stuff.
I'll
right?
go grab my cards
Okay,
before you
great.
guys leave, and I'll give it to you. Just
Thank you.
send me an email, and we're scheduling some for May and June, so I'd love to get you guys to get some meetings scheduled at the same time. We're really trying to focus on some tribal outreach too, because there's a large tribal population in this area. They have a lot of different lands and a lot of water uses. So.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Marlena.
Very enlightening.
Yes. Okay, matters from staff. Item 7A, distribution of PowerPoint presentation from Mead and Hunt Airport Land Use Comprehensive Plan Update.
Thank you, Julia Acker-Krog, Chief Planner. So as you've seen in your packets, you have a copy of the presentation. There are several commissioners that do staff that Airport Land Use Commission. And so really this was the kickoff meeting, and what we'll be seeing is in the upcoming months, there's going to be a group of us that will be participating in really working with the consultant Mead and Hunt on this document. And there will be the opportunity, you'll see in that packet, there is a timeline that's included in there, which includes hearings that would include coming in front of the Planning Commission here. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but right now we're really in the preliminary stages.
No, but I'm really glad it's happening. Our plan was so out of date, it was getting hard to do any enforcement with it or anything. You know, people could challenge it pretty easily. And I'm really glad that it's in partnership with the city.
Did you get this packet?
Makes the money work better.
It came with
Get the package.
Oh,
I've been online.
you don't have the agenda for today's meeting or anything?
I went online.
Oh.
I haven't
I got
gotten-
mine last night and I had downloaded the whole thing too, but then I got it in the mail when my mail came at the end of the day.
I got mine like 2 weeks ago.
That's a problem.
It is a problem. And, you know, I don't know if everybody knows, but all our mail in Mendocino County goes all the way to Oakland, even
Yeah.
if it's going just across the street.
That's right.
Right.
And so sometimes there's a glitch. I mean, I got mine and my mail came at 4:30 yesterday. I had downloaded it, but it's a lot easier to carry the paper than to carry the computer.
What I
Went
would
online.
suggest to the commissioners is that if you have not received the packet and it's a couple days before the hearing, please reach out to us, because we do have, you know, offices both in Fort Bragg and Ukiah, and we can make a point of ensuring that you get a printed packet so you don't have to download off the website.
Good.
I don't necessarily mind that, except that they don't really like you using computers around here. We're still in string and juice cans here at Mendocino County. And so, you know, you can't go online to get anything from here is the trouble.
Sure.
Well, I'm online right now.
On the county's network?
I get the library,
Oh,
county library, but you can Google, you know, you can go online. Is there a set date that the mailing goes out to this commission? You know, is it like a week before,
It is 2 weeks prior.
2 weeks prior?
so if in a week we haven't gotten it, that would be the time.
Right.
I would say just reach out to us and we can certainly make an effort to ensure that you get your printed packets.
Learning the language. Okay, thank you.
And if there's no questions on the Airport Land Use Commission handout, then the one other thing I wanted to note is that there is going to be a meeting on May 16th, and as Director Schultz said earlier, there are 7 items on that agenda. It is going to be a very long meeting. We potentially will be going after lunchtime, so I just want everyone to be prepared that that is going to be an extensive meeting that day.
Right.
Well, will that be a 9 o'clock or a 10?
That is a 9 o'clock start time,
Okay.
and packets will be being mailed out tomorrow.
Do you have my address?
Can we pick them up today? Are they ready? I mean, I'm here. But I will. I mean, my last experience, I'd rather just have it in my hand.
And that concludes, I have no other matters from staff, but I'm certainly available for questions.
Any questions of Julia? No, thank you. Okay, yeah, and well, you and I had talked on the phone about getting together, and so I was kind of hoping I could get my packet soon too. But I don't know if it'd be
Did you have a good tour of the airport?
ready later today, Adrian, or, I'm sorry, I'm kind of putting you on the,
We can try for later today.
Okay.
You could certainly, we could give you a call.
Pick it up.
okay,
Yeah,
super.
we'll give you a
Great.
call.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Anything else? Okay, any matters from commission? Travels, not going to be at the next, does everyone plan on being at our next meeting?
Yes.
Good, because it sounds like it's going to be a rather lengthy meeting. Then on item 9, we have approval of minutes, and it's been recommended that we approve each one individually. So we have, first off, the minutes of January 18th, 2018.
I move approval of those minutes.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Thank you. Do we need individual votes or just as a group? Caitlin?
Voice vote.
Voice vote, okay. Caitlin?
Yes, a voice vote would be acceptable.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And our next one would be April 19th, 2018.
I'll move approval.
Second?
And I did want to make a comment that I had submitted a couple of very minor corrections. Do I need to go over those? Okay, thank you. Okay,
And I will be abstaining since I was not present.
at the April 19th? Okay, thank you, Molly. All those in favor of approval for April 19th minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
And one abstention, I guess. Okay. Randy, were you abstaining or were you?
Well,
did you-
we talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the
We
two
need everybody
18.
to vote.
Yeah, and from what I understand, you're able to, which is
You
kind
are
of
allowed to
uncomfortable.
vote.
to-
You just
To
aren't
approve
allowed
minutes
to
of a meeting you
amend,
haven't been to. So I approved the January minutes. However, I'm not really, I wasn't there, of course.
I understand what you mean.
So, from what I understand, we are to participate even if we weren't there.
I don't think it's a requirement.
Okay. I'm more comfortable not, to tell you the truth, just because it's difficult. So I'm going to
So
abstain.
you're abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. And Diana, or you?
I'll vote so we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have, what? 5 yeses and 2 abstentions. Okay. And then we have the May 3rd, 2018 minutes for approval.
I'll move approval.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, and Molly, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
I'll
Aye.
abstain.
Okay, Allison's abstaining and Randy's.
And I'll abstain.
Okay. You're
vote
voting
yes.
Diana. And then we have February 7th, 2019. We can
actually remember that.
I'll make the motion for approval of the February 7th,
Thank you, Diana.
2019.
And I'll second
And
that.
Randy will second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Okay.
Abstain?
Oh, you weren't at our thing, that's right. So one abstention, sorry. Did you get all that, Caitlin? Was that okay?
I got them all, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, adjournment.
I guess we need a motion to,
I move that we adjourn.
Second?
okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
God, masterful.
Better bring a lunch, I guess, for the next
Aye.
meeting.
Or be ready.
You know,
We're out of there before lunch.
God, that sounds real low.
Okay.